Senator from New Jersey.
Mr. President, I ask unanimous consent that I be recognized to speak for up to 15 minutes in morning business.
Without objection.
Mr. President, we've arrived at a moment of truth. The American economy and our standing in the world hangs in balance as a result of a Republican plan to derail the functioning of our country and bring about the precarious prospect of a major default in our financial condition. Democrats have bent over backwards to compromise, and yet the Republicans continue to put our country in jeopardy. And the American people and the American economy are determined for a reprieve from this disaster. And, well, we just heard comments by our colleague from across the aisle about getting our tax structure in order. Reminds me of a condition where there's a fire in a house and people start arguing about the color of the fire engine. What we have here in front of us is an immediate disaster program that could upset the balance of our functioning in our society and put America for the first time in a position of less support from around the world and putting people, working people, hard at work trying to keep ends meet are going to be prevented from doing so. So we ask, isn't this a time for our Republican friends to stop playing gotcha, stop putting politics ahead of the needs of our middle-class families, and instead start putting the people before politics? Make no mistake, the people that we serve are nervous and concerned. Purchasing power has declined while wage increases have been insufficient for family needs. And many in America are working their fingers to the bone to get out of this economic squeeze and keep their families intact. And all this time, while the richest among us see monumental gains in their incomes and their wealth, the people who have the burdens of maintaining our infrastructure, running our military, and defending the very foundation of our democratic country are struggling daily to stay in their homes, hold on to their health care, and get their kids to college. And the American people are the ones, the ordinary people, the middle-income people are the ones who are going to suffer the most if the Republicans force the U.S. government to default next week. 14 million Americans are already out of work, but more than 500,000 may join the unemployment line further if we don't raise the debt limit. And that's just the beginning. A default crisis will send interest rates skyrocketing, which will be adding even more expense on the American middle class and make it harder for them to meet basic family needs. They'll be forced to pay higher interest rates for mortgages, student loans, car loans, and credit cards. And that money won't help create jobs or rebuild our economy. It'll be going to the banks and to China and to investors who are going to demand higher yields for U.S. bond purchases because they are less reliable in their likelihood of being paid back. We're also likely to see another calamity on Wall Street if the United States doesn't pay its bills. The stock markets have already been seeing daily declines in anticipation of a reckless attempt to put politics in the middle of financial Armageddon. One analysis found that shareholders in U.S. stocks lost more than $400 billion during the past week, while House Republicans were fiddling with a scheme they knew never would become law, but they don't want to write law. They want to destroy the Obama presidency. That's what the mission is. The Dow has just had its worst week in a year, and consumers do not have spare dollars for investments because their incomes are consumed by spending money on basic necessities and because they're wary of losses that will occur from the prospect of default. Mr. President, Imagine what it will mean to the 401k savings of middle-class Americans, much of it accumulated over years. If faith in our country and its value decline sharply as defaults loom ahead, their values can go down precipitously. Our retirement savings can also be, other retirement savings can also be wiped out, all because of these punitive actions by their Republican representatives. The pain will be excruciating for the neediest Americans. Seniors living on a fixed income could be forced to go without their Social Security checks and the critical health care they receive through Medicare. And we might not be able to deliver promised benefits to veterans or paychecks for the men and women wearing our country's uniform in Afghanistan and Iraq. And I want to be clear. A default will injure America's reputation throughout the world. It will weaken faith in the world's most respected financial power, leaving our country's credibility, stability, and financial leadership in doubt. Simply put, defaulting on the debt could trigger an economic collapse of historic proportion. And that's why I plead with our Republican colleagues, join us without delay in adopting Majority Leader Reid's plan. Senator Reid's plan will provide certainty for middle-class Americans and to the markets because it will provide stability. That's what we need right now through 2013. Mr. President, this plan isn't perfect. In fact, including me, believe it should include revenues. It doesn't, but that's why it's called a compromise. And after we adopt this plan and step back from the brink, we need to work on a balanced approach to get our country back on sound economic footing. And it means asking the wealthiest among us to pay their fair share. I was one of those who was very fortunate in my business experience. I started a company with two other fellows, and we have 45,000 employees today. Why? It was because our country was there for me after I served in uniform in World War II. I was able to get an education at Columbia University, and we started that company called ADP. 45,000 people have their jobs because of ADP. And it means our Republican colleagues have to abandon their obsession to protect the wealthiest among us at an unaffordable cost to the poor and the middle class. It means recognizing the value of our country's human infrastructure. No economy can grow if you don't invest in physical infrastructure like roads, bridges, railways, and no society can prosper if you don't invest in education, propping up our human infrastructure to enable Americans to fill the future jobs in technology and science and research. Let's face it, buildings, houses, other physical facilities are never built from the top down. The work requires a strong foundation to guarantee reliability, endurance, and safety now and for the future. Middle-class families form America's foundation. The pillars of strength, faith in the future, belief that Americans can survive challenges and catastrophes, and further belief that no place on earth exists with more freedom and liberty than our blessed country. But all that could evaporate if default is permitted to come. And over the past half-century, the debt ceiling has been raised 75 times, almost two-thirds of them under Republican presidents. In fact, the debt ceiling was increased 18 times under President Reagan and 7 times under President George W. Bush. Our country has never defaulted on its obligations, and default must be prevented if we love our country. It's time for the Republicans to abandon their my way or the highway approach. It's time for the Republicans to stop playing politics with our country's economy. The time for politics is Election Day 2012, not now. Let's do our work, keep our precious ship steady afloat. Majority Leader Reid's plan is our best hope to avoid a disaster, and we need to act on it without further delay. And with that, Mr. President, I yield the floor. I yield back any balance of time and note the absence.
Mr. President.
Senator from Washington.